Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Optimizing Application Performance Through Real-Time Change Awareness. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Our featured speakers are Dennis Drogseth, VP of Research at Enterprise Management Associates, and Sasha Gillenson, Founder and CEO at Evolven. Dennis brings over 30 years of experience in various aspects of marketing and business planning for service management solutions. He supports EMA through leadership in business service management, CMDB systems, automation systems, and service-centric financial optimization. Sasha is the founder and CEO at Evolven. Prior to founding Evolven in 2007, Sasha spent 13 years with Mercury Interactive, managing the Q&A organization and participating in establishing Mercury Interactive software as a service. And before I hand things over to today's featured speakers, I wanted the audience to know that Dennis and Sasha will be concluding today's event by taking your questions. Feel free to log them anytime using the Q&A functionality. Also, today's event is being recorded and you will receive a follow-up email from EMA that will include the on-demand playback, a PDF of the speaker slides, and additional information on Evolven. So I hope that you will check that email out. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our first featured speaker, Dennis Drogseth. Dennis?
Well, thank you, Raleigh, and thank you all for joining us on our webinar here. The topic is multidimensional, and therefore our objective is to share with you thoughts that are multidimensional, approaching it from different perspectives. So I'll start today with a little bit of background on the demographics. There's a lot of research that you'll see. Just give you a rough list of where it came from. I guess the first slice of the pie for this topic would be, how is IT changing? Because we're looking at change impact. So what are some of the leading forces? Cloud, digital transformation, and DevOps. Then we're going to look specifically at some of the unique challenges in application performance management, and a fairly interesting look, I think, based on very recent research on what's really going on in the digital war room. We'll move on to look at how advanced analytics can really optimize service performance through real-time change awareness, and why those two pieces come together, having some analytics that are proactive, can assimilate data, and can look at change impact. We can also look at the unifying value of this type of analytic investment with real-time change awareness in terms of IT as a whole. And then finally, wrapping up, I guess last slice of the pie, if you want to look at it that way, with why it's really good to get off that hamster wheel when it comes to application lifecycle management. So very quickly looking at our demographics for what you'll see. I'm not going to try to map every slide to every research project, but just so you know, several very current ones in terms of analytics at the crossroads and digital war room decision making, then going back in terms of user and customer and digital experience, next generation IT service management, and a little bit on integrating SecOps with operations. We also have ongoing dialogue and ongoing consulting conversations that I've drawn from. And you'll actually see that I am drawing as well from a brief conversation or a solid conversation with an actual Evolven deployment to illustrate two of my points. So there's a lot going on about how IT is changing and why, and of course this could be a 3-hour discussion in itself. I've chosen to start with cloud, which is a prominent area of interest. Ongoing story, far from done. It's really not a journey to the cloud where you have an end game where you simply get there and you celebrate. It's really a story of migration and optimization, understanding what's there in context with everything else you have, and how do you optimize it with change going on. And you see here from data from last year, 20% of the workloads are in the public cloud. We just saw from some research that came in literally last week, that's beginning to look more like 30 to 40% in certain environments. It's certainly a growth area. And of course, there's the difference. There's multi-cloud, where you're dealing more and more with multiple public cloud providers, which only aggravates or exacerbates the need to understand what's there, how it's changing, and how it's impacting your application services. Hybrid cloud, which is between the public and the private and potentially legacy environments, and managing all those cohesively. And then cloud being stimulated as a resource for DevOps. Another context there, we'll look at DevOps as well. And also changes in environment, changes going to containers. We're seeing a movement of putting 20, even to 30% of applications into container type environments, microservices. So it's not a simple landscape. Very simple kind of single exclamation point on this slide. The biggest message here is if you're spending more on your cloud services, you're probably accelerating your spending more on cloud services than those who are not. It's an accelerating experience in general and an accelerating requirement. You can see here, again, from last year, about 30% of their budgets on cloud-specific services. General 10% per year growth rate. You have more, you're going to spend more. So endless conversations about why people are going to cloud. There are three really salient reasons here in the middle, and probably the single most outstanding point, increased flexibility and agility. But you look at the top two, blue and green, are both cost-related issues, cost saving straight out, and moving to a more OpEx-focused environment. Then if you look at the bottom two, you see pressure from the top down, both driven from IT, but also from the business side of the house. Got to move to the cloud. You've got to get cost efficiencies. There's good and bad in this. When we look at the impacts of moving to the cloud, it's putting a lot of pressures as well as opportunities on IT. So some of the data we see when we looked at impacts on IT overall, shortening review cycles for managing change, changing how they approach release management, changing organizational models, requiring higher levels of automation, pushing more attention to SecOps, and making asset management increasingly challenging, along with putting pressures to justify costs. You can always go to the cloud. Why can't you do things more cheaply? From other perspectives in terms of analytics, we looked at challenges such as change impact and optimizing understanding the impacts of change, an ongoing challenge with cloud. A lot of issues in integrated security and integrate with performance and change, understanding the impacts of change in cloud migration and its impacts on real-time service performance. In general, the move to cloud carries challenges that really can impact application performance, increasing struggling for root cause in a complex, sort of multifaceted environment, and most prominently the need to be able to relate change to performance in a very real-time manner. The other factor to look at, sort of factor two, how are we changing? We hear a lot about digital transformation, and we've done extensive research over the time of the past 3 or 4 years on that. One of the things we've discovered is indeed that digital transformation and IT transformation are closely related. You don't get to digital transformation. It's not a magic wand. As I often like to say, it's not Penn and Teller digital. It really works through IT services, and it depends on the efficiencies, consistency, and the performance of IT services. The two are very closely linked. And we also see accelerating trends. This is very positive data from Q4 of last year. You can see a strong percentage, 63%, make it a very high priority, and it's been in place. Others, a high priority. If you add those two together, you obviously get pretty much the bigger picture. This is not a dream of the future. It's ongoing, and it's required for businesses to succeed, just as it's required for IT to succeed. But it also comes at a price. And the price for digital transformation is still, to a large degree, still being understood. How do we make it real? What are the challenges in this environment? We looked at it from 4 different angles. So just specifically, what were the outstanding obstacles for digital transformation? Getting clear processes relating to across IT and between IT and the business understood, and poor communication. You think about what we're talking about here, change impact and app performance. Those are areas of broken communication quite often. IT transformation, we look at it specifically, you get those fragmented organizational political views, and then underneath that, ineffective IT leadership. Also suggestive of the need to marry and understand change and performance across silos. When we asked IT stakeholders what they saw in terms of top obstacles, once again, the human face, organization, political, but then very related. I can't tell you how often in consulting we see how many times organizational political issues are related to data sharing and data issues and getting common data in a good sense together across the broader IT organization. And finally, from business stakeholders, they also saw a need for vision from IT to understand the move toward a proactive approach to service transformation, but also warring and siloed tools. Once again, the need to bring a sense of change awareness and performance together as critical factors. Overall, from digital transformation, we see IT organizations are increasingly finding themselves between two opposite forces. One is increasing pressures to do more with less and demonstrate efficiencies and show cost values. But the other is, again, that more side, to generate more applications more quickly and literally help the business to transform proactively. They have to do all this and do it more efficiently. The third factor we'll look at briefly here is DevOps, sort of related to digital transformation, acceleration toward getting more applications out there faster and more relevant to IT. And we're seeing more being done in-house again from last year, about 33%. That's a percentage that we find is growing. We'll see more on that this year. And pressures, again, digital transformation, expectations of going more agile, IT viewed as a creative force, not just about keeping the lights on, and cloud is also an enabler and stimulant in bringing this together. And DevOps is also a demanding factor. You need to get cross-silo. You need to get more transparent and visible IT. You need a more technology-aware IT and more application-aware and more business-centric. And if you can see there at the bottom, about 25% are actually delivering new code multiple times a day, 20% new code daily, and 20% less. So it's a reality. Now I'd like to cite from a conversation with a large financial services organization, commenting on in this case, using Evolven and how its impact, which reflects directly on the DevOps initiative. We saw automation workflows increasingly covering the process from request to realization, including test and verification. So more automation. They saw less human intervention is needed, effort was minimized. So traditional segregation of operations and development duties becoming essentially obsolete, being dealt with more with cohesive workflows. Velocity was increased, margin of human error was reduced, and they saw double-digit percentile cost efficiency improvements over a 1 and 2 year time period. Moreover, come to market time was drastically decreased. So that can help to inform how change and performance can be brought together and the values. Let's look a little bit at some of the unique challenges in app performance management. So APM got a big share of big mind share a number of years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Certainly it was a source of great innovation, and APM leaders today are working to move forward. But one of the issues that APM kind of replaced in a way business service management, which was an even broader view. APM is still largely a monitoring focus. It's still very centric in applications. And even though it's moving in some vendor cases to machine learning, it's rarely or not essentially a broad-based analytics platform. DevOps pressures for speed and consistency are also changing the game. And in some of the ways that traditional APM solutions have been instrumented, putting pressures again for different approaches to understanding application performance. So what's really critical is to get beyond just what symptoms there are and even a sense of topology, but beyond that, where is the problem? What happened? Where did things change? And that's where we're seeing a growing need to move toward broader-based analytic platforms, given the complexity of the current environment. Now here you have an eye chart. I realize that. The main point about this eye chart is to make a point that this really is an eye chart. The challenges of managing applications today go through this whole list and then some. And if you look at this list, most except 4 are actually design types or architectural types. The only 4 that are not, the number 1, IT services delivered to client organizations externally. Okay, so that is a particular use case. You skip down a couple, packaged internal productivity business apps. So those are score high and they're generic. You have to drop down to 24% to see external business apps, and then 23% to see industry specific. But beyond that, we're looking at different design points, different structures with different challenges in how you manage the apps. You see a lot of cloud, right? Number 2, hybrid cloud. You skip down to 26, you'll see native cloud apps for virtualization. You skip down to 24, you'll see apps hosted by IaaS or platform as a service provider. You get further down to 22, API connected apps, native cloud microservices down to 22%, but that's growing now, as I say, up towards 33. So just one example of design changes there. And of course, down at the bottom, omnichannel at the endpoint, also a factor. Triage is critical then. And then triage has to spread across these various types. And triage needs to be change aware for it to work. You can see the list of most prominent triage types here. The percentages, by the way, we asked, what types of technical triage are you actively pursuing? Okay, that was the question there. And number 1 was 31% with whether it's the application, the server, the network, or the database. Triage across virtualized systems with 28%. Isolate the relevant service provider was 26%. Isolate problems in provisioning applications over internal cloud with 25%. So you go on down. The very bottom, evaluate digital performance issues in applications prior to deployment, 19%. So you see a fairly strong percentage, and obviously they could check all that applied. But again, it's a wide range, and all can be relevant in the same environment. So what's going on in that digital war room? We did some unique research on what that was, and I think it was a bit surprising in some ways. Sticking to the focus on application performance, who's making up the digital war room? We saw that 17% were in IT applications management and support, 15% were IT operations planning and design, but 8% were application development. And those were the top 4 along with executive IT management. And those are top groups, app right there in the top, and you spread on down to things like architecture, cloud, service desk, security, etc., all part of that. So here are top issues in the digital war room. And it was really these issues that specifically asking about where are your tool sets least effective, okay? And all of these areas scored very high. In fact, between top and bottom here, we only have a 5% delta. And these are at the top of the list. So inability to relate change in performance and identifying root cause, core to our topic today, right among those top groups. Migrations to public cloud, also very change related. Migrations to cloud and virtualized environments. Dealing with security, which is very change related as well. Issues from Agile and DevOps, very change related as well. At the bottom, you see the time it takes more than 6 hours to go from initial awareness to resolution on average for an incident that gets funneled into the war room team. 20% take on average more than 11 hours on average. And of course, we know about the days, multiple days that war room decision making can take. The number of application issues brought forward through the service desk through complaints, right? Not proactively, because that can also be proactive. 30%. And that is very consistent with data we just got in last week from DevOps as well. That is not going away. There's still a need to get beyond that reactive life. What's interesting, too, about the digital war room is it's growing. People think about it, oh, the war room's going to go away. It's all going to be automated. We're all going to fix it. What's interesting is if you have a well-defined digital war room, that is a team of people who are really defined in incident management, and you invest in SecOps and DevOps as part of that team, you're likely to be more effective, not less. And in fact, we saw actually about 30% doing proactive resolution in digital war room. That's a growing opportunity. It just is not all about something being broken. And we're seeing if you're growing your digital war room in this positive way, you're more likely to be more successful. But what are the obstacles? And this time we looked at obstacles not in terms of just tool sets, but more broadly. And so here you can see, again, the top 4 security-related issues. 34% of our respondents thought that was number 1. Inconsistent or inaccurate data. Both of these very change-related and very tied to performance. And data fragmentation, separate siloed views, also at 32%. And then reactive, we learned about something, but it was too late, not real-time aware. That was at 31%. We also saw issues such as lack of automation, complexities due to cloud, lack of accountability, understanding the source of the problem and who owned it, and just too many tool sets. We often see, just for instance, well more than 10 or 11 discovery and inventory tools in the same environment. So how can advanced analytics bring real-time change awareness and app performance together? When we look at advanced analytics platforms and how they're evolving, they do have multiple values and multiple use cases. Different solutions have different focuses. Cross-domain performance management at some level is pretty much central to everyone. They all do that, some relevance to that. Real-time change impact awareness, a unique strength of Evolven, is something that many other tools seek to have, but not with quite Evolven's focus in general. Change management more broadly, cloud migration, capacity management, DevOps, SecOps, and actually bringing in end user and customer experience, which is, in my mind, still the ultimate where the rubber hits the road if you understand how your services are valued and to be valued. Then we looked at what are the really targeted areas that you need for making those analytic investments count when it comes to change and change impact. And you can see here, again, another eye chart. And I believe, Raleigh, that the slide decks will be made available if you don't have to commit this to memory. But number 1 was configuration drift. And you can see very strong commonality across extended enterprise issues, configuration management effectiveness at number 3. There are optimization questions, app optimization, infrastructure optimization at 29, storage optimization also at 29. All those optimization issues are very change-related as well. DevOps efficiencies down at 28, very change-related, etc. Public cloud efficiencies. All these things really profit from real-time change awareness. Understanding interdependencies is another focus of mine, actually, and it's another focus of analytics. That's key. And here you have an overall guideline on the what people are looking for. In fact, infrastructure to application was number one at 49%, then infrastructure to infrastructure at 43%, infrastructure to business services at 43%, you look down application component at 41%, container-based. You can see the ongoing requirements, non-virtualized to virtualized infrastructure. All these things count. And what's interesting is there's really not a huge difference. They're all rated fairly highly. And the average respondent wanted about 5 interdependencies understood. So how can analytics provide a more unified way of unifying IT? One of the things to look at in a good analytics solution is going to have especially good change impact awareness is its ability to assimilate different types of sources. Those sources can be automation related. Quite often they're monitoring related and app performance related. They can also be other areas such as CMS or CMDB related or dependency mapping related from other sources. Fill in the blank. And there are quite a wide variety of automation technologies that can be associated. But the average respondent wanted over 20 integrations supported through their analytics platform, what I believe Evolven may still call tiered analytics, bringing these sources together cohesively. That has political as well as sort of intellectual value because it brings the data together without forcing everyone to throw their tool sets away all at once, and also can allow you to optimize how you're using existing tool sets by shedding light on what's really going on and seeing what's needed and what's not. From a stakeholder perspective, the message is maybe even stronger. We saw an average of nearly 19 stakeholders being requested for an advanced analytic solution. I've put in bold those most relevant to our conversation today: app management, which is right at the top, then operations overall, agile DevOps teams, customer experience management. But if you look at this list and you think of, again, both the technology but also the political values of having those insights being shared in a cohesive way, both across IT and with the business, you see the power, or at least the potential power, of the unifying investment of an AIOps solution. And one area that has been a focus of mine is operations and IT service management. The two not as separate as some people think, and ITSM maybe not what many people think. It's not just the service desk, but generally has many players beyond the service desk working through ITSM processes. Closer ties help to feed success for IT overall, and the number one factor in bringing ITSM and operations together was to address change-related issues. So change impact awareness was key there. Last slide before Sasha. So this hamster wheel was not my idea. Originally it came from our work in, believe it or not, CMDB consulting, because you certainly have to get people off the hamster wheel for CMDB and CMS deployments. And what is the hamster wheel? It's a hamster wheel of here's how it worked, what I'm used to using, here are my tool sets, I don't have time to change, I don't want to deal with a change, I want to stick to my data, I don't really want to share it. And that happens quite often, and it's not a big plus, and it requires both good technologies, and it of course requires conversations as well and good leadership. But there are a lot of reasons to get beyond the APM hamster wheel. Improved productivity you get across IT, improved customer satisfaction, better quality services, improved IT operational efficiency, so employee productivity internal to IT, I should have said. Better business competitiveness with increased revenue, strong business outcome, increased brand loyalty, of course, because we're not seeing our websites disappear when we try to order something. Better business process optimization, that's a whole area of growth as services become more digital and business processes themselves become implemented through more digital services. improved agile DevOps efficiencies, and both in terms of quality and time, coping with cloud in all of its dimensions, improved levels of security and compliance, which all critical and again very change related, and minimizing risk in simply making changes because you know what's happened. Every one of these, 1 to 10, is very change impact sensitive. Before turning it over to Sasha, I'll just read one more quote from the financial group where they basically said here, okay, we leverage Evolven's blended analytics for a more dynamic record and facilitate automation. They drove automation through Evolven, critical for performance and change management. With that, they had a cleaner set of change verification histories, so they weren't dealing with just unknowns. They were dealing with realities. That's nice, right? Doesn't always happen in real life, though. And with Evolven, we have an analytically rich capability that also complements our need for currency and understanding actual changes and how they may impact app performance. Our theme for today, and Sasha, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Dennis, thank you for a very insightful presentation.
My pleasure.
And let me start with a short introduction of Evolven, who we are. Our company develops technology of change analytics and awareness for the last 12 years, and we continue to innovate and deliver major technology leaps every year. Our product is extensively used by such large and leading enterprises as JP Morgan Chase and Citi, Dell, IQVIA, and many others, global 500 organizations across various verticals. Over the years, working with all our customers, Evolven gathered enormous amount of experience in understanding changes, understanding change properties, change impact like nobody else. And this both fueled our innovation, resulting in unique capabilities we'll be talking about today, and also deep understanding of IT needs and trends. So we are in 2019, and what we observe is quite shocking. You know, this is a year that classic science fiction envisioned full of flying cars and space travel. And flying cars, they do seem to be getting closer, and we see the world moving to advanced technologies like cloud, using chat operations, robots, artificial intelligence. But still, IT struggles with the same availability and performance issues as it did decades ago, and we still have war rooms engaging dozens of specialists for hours just to figure out what's going on. And here is an example, right? I'm sure that you all are aware of the outage that Facebook experienced just 2 weeks ago. And to rub salt in the wound, they needed to announce this outage and measures they take using Twitter, which is a bitter rival of Facebook. But what's important is that Facebook has attributed the outage to a configuration change. Think about a configuration change that can take a modern environment like Facebook down for 14 hours. And think about the business impact. You know, another competitor of Facebook, Telegram, announced that they had 3 million of new subscribers moving to Telegram from Facebook just in 24 hours. And so, Facebook took 14 hours to resolve this major outage. And what Dennis also indicated is that it takes on average 6 hours for a digital war room to resolve a critical issue. And so the question is, why are we spending so much time in the war rooms? And I personally was part of this process many, many times. I also discussed, issues post-mortem with the customers many, many times. And all the evidence makes me to believe that the reason is a myopic focus of technical organization on symptoms. We in Evolven, we coined this phenomenon SYMPTOMPIA, like myopia. And any enterprise organization today has tons of monitoring tools. You guys have APM and server monitoring and network monitoring and log monitoring. And there's so much information coming from the monitoring tools that there is even a new type of tools. It's called event management that was developed to reduce the noise to cluster events and focus on really important situations. And then we also have numerous analytics platforms that were announced by incumbent and new vendors that take monitoring data and try to reverse engineer this data to solve issues or to detect anomalies to predict issues. And all of these tools, all of them focus on performance and availability data, which only represents symptoms of the systems that are not feeling well. So symptoms are very important. You obviously need to know when an issue develops. And analysis of symptoms helps to narrow down location of the issue. However, with all due respect, saying that, for example, a particular database query is slow is not equal to finding a real root cause why it is slow. Is it because the query statement was changed, or the change is, the query was bad for performance? Is it because the amount of data processed by the query increased, or because the database server configuration was updated and now it impacts query execution time? Is it because the environment setup that actually slows the database? You see that pointing to a location of the issue doesn't solve the problem. You still need to run investigation that can be pretty excessive to make a decision on what actually caused the issue and what needs to be fixed. This SYMPTOMPIA completely misses the true root causes, the root causes that are leading to long hours in the war room. So what is the true root cause of the issues? What is taking time and effort to deal with? And we all know the answer. The following statement is obviously when we share it with the customers, they all agree with that most of the stability, performance, and functionality issues are caused by some kind of change. This could be configuration changes and code changes and data changes, workload, or some other types of changes. But it's almost always some change in the end, that you find that brought the worm together. And your organization could be highly mature with high degree of automation and well-defined and followed processes. Or you can be a young organization with limited control and manual processes managing your environment. But in the end, you still will be struggling to tell what changes were made in your environment in the last few hours, few days, or few weeks. And when I say changes, I mean actual changes. Not change records in the service desk that describe intent of a person executing them at some high level, and it's not packages that aggregate numerous commits and updates in an artifact repository. What I mean is granular updates that are actually deployed and executed in your environment. Like, for example, changing size of connection pool for an application server is a granular change. Or modifying a currency field in application master data is also a change. Or updating a Java class in a microserver is a change. And these are the changes that you need to make an effort to identify when answering one of the first questions that a war room asks: what changed? These are the changes, the small changes that can trigger stability, major stability issues like the ones that took Facebook down for 14 hours. Every organization today strives to be agile. They strive to increase efficiency and quality of internal and external services while deploying and executing changes fast. There is only one way to avoid log outages, by doing a very straightforward thing, a very reasonable thing, answering two questions together: what is wrong and what changed? And either you are part of DevOps, CloudOps, or ITOps, you still need to answer these two questions together. And it is critical to be able to monitor the health of your business systems and services. If anything bad is going to happen, you want to be alerted as early as possible. And more accurate tools, they can identify location of an issue, and once you have the location, you can address the issue faster. But entirely focusing on what's wrong will not help to identify what caused the issue. And here comes an answer to the second question: what changed? If a transaction performance an hour ago was good, and now the transaction doesn't perform, something has changed, right? If one server instance works and another doesn't, then something is different between them. There are tons of changes that happen in any enterprise IT environment all the time, and larger environment, more the changes, and we have customers, that, where we detect millions of changes per day. So knowing which specific change or different root cause is a key to effectively diagnose, remediate, and prevent performance availability issues. So the combination of existing application performance management technologies, like leading ones like Dynatrace, AppDynamics, New Relic, and others, with Evolven Change Analytics, automatically answers these two key questions we just discussed. This combination finally provides an end-to-end solution to automated root cause analysis and issue prevention. And automatic solution for root cause analysis and issue prevention can transform performance management and operation, truly transform it. Modern IPM tools, they do provide clear picture of what is wrong and where is the issue. They recognize performance deviations from performance baselines, user set or automated. They track transaction execution in the business systems as they measure every step of transaction as they build transaction topology. That's very useful information that with Evolven information about all the relevant changes and differences made in the business systems can again provide an answer to this key question: what's wrong and what's changed together? Applying machine learning to these two sets of data to correlate and prioritize them allows to deliver actionable insights in the root causes of the detected issues and to the possible future issues. Right? IPM analytics know how to group and prioritize performance events and tie them to specific steps of application transactions. Our analytics know how to correlate change to the target events and transaction steps. And we prioritize these changes based on their probability of causing an issue. So together, APM and Evolven can deliver an end-to-end performance management process that doesn't exist today separately. So how does this work? First of all, Evolven collects information about the actual granular change that happens in the environment. Right? We have our own collection technology that scans the environments, application down to infrastructure, virtual and physical environments, on-premise and cloud, all these environments to pull information about inventory and configuration and the application changes and all the other types of the changes. We detect them on our own because nobody else is actually collecting this information. At the same time, we can ingest information from the APM tools, information about the key performance events, performance problems, topology of the transactions, transaction performance breakdown. So we get all this information that we collect on our own, the changes that we collect on our own, and ingested information. We run it through our analytics engine that correlates the information, correlates the performance events with the changes that Evolven has detected, and also prioritizes these changes, pointing to the ones that are the most probable root cause of a performance issue. At the same time, our analytics calculates the probability of a change to cause future issues. So even if there is no performance event, right, the APM tool shows that everything is fine, we still detect a change, run through our risk analysis, and we say this change is fine now, but in the future it can cause particular issue. Okay, so altogether, we take this data and we can push it back to APM tool as part of the root cause analysis in APM tool, present it in the APM dashboard, or we have our own interface, user interface, where you can execute interactively the analysis. We deliver alerts on risky changes, and we provide also offline reports that show the health of your environment, again, in terms of the change risk. So we work with multiple types of organizations, and these are the companies running traditional ITIL-based IT, the ones that moved to DevOps to increase their agility, organizations that started to use cloud and created CloudOps to support their cloud platform and applications on top of it. And each of these organizations has its own way to use Evolven, answering why in addition to what and where. right? So if we look at production support, they have a quite straightforward use case. Whenever there is an issue they need to resolve, they actually leverage Evolven to identify changes that cause this issue, right? That's kind of the primary capability of our analytics, correlation. At the same time, many organizations, they do realize that the whole war room can be prevented if they catch a bad change before it causes an issue. So they use Evolven also to proactively alert production support on high-risk changes. And again, it could be a dashboard in a NOC showing the high-risk changes. It could be an alert. It could be information pushed back into existing dashboards that production support uses to manage the environment. Well, CloudOps has a fresh set of challenges comparing to traditional production support, right? Incident recovery in the cloud is typically much easier than in legacy environments due to the architecture of microservices that are loosely coupled and independent, ability of automated rollbacks frequently, and other self-healing capabilities of the cloud. The challenge is that resolving a problem behind the incidents becomes much more difficult. It's not easy to reproduce a state when an incident was detected in a dynamic and elastic cloud environment. The environment can be rolled back and updated again several times since the point when an incident was detected. Well, Evolven does keep a track of the environment inventory and configuration at any point of time, right? So then our analytics uses this information to correlate detected changes with the problem, so that the problem investigation becomes much faster. So we can help with problem management, problem investigation, problem analysis to CloudOps. Well, DevOps teams focus on speed of application lifecycle, right, while keeping service quality high. So you do the changes faster, but you want the system to stay stable in spite of the amount of changes. We bring additional key use case that helps organization to increase their agility while maximizing stability, like solving agility-stability paradox. As changes are moving through continuous integration, continuous delivery pipeline, as they get to testing environments, to automated testing, Evolven points to high-risk changes in pre-production environments before they make a way to production. So essentially you can predict the impact of the changes as they go through the life cycle towards the production before they get to production and cause a problem. So overall we are focusing on a very important area of incident and problem investigation and prevention in this session. However, before we switch to the demo, I would like to mention that Evolven offers many more use cases addressing ITSM processes, compliance, intelligent automation, and many other IT domains. But there is plenty of materials covering this use case on our website that you can actually find after this session. So at this point, let me actually show you a few key use cases that to illustrate actually the capabilities and the challenges I was talking about. All right, so I will use one of the leading APM tools, Dynatrace. And what I'm actually showing you right now is the problem screen of Dynatrace, where Dynatrace's artificial intelligence is grouping all the different events in performance problems. And that's actually that an operator, again, a DevOps person, a developer, a production support person will use the screen to actually start an investigation of these problems. So let's look at this problem where we have a response time degradation in Tomcat services. So essentially we drill down, and Dynatrace is organizing the root cause analysis by aggregating all the data into analysis flow. So we see that there were 4 response time degradations on Catalina, which is a Tomcat service. We see actually that there was a configuration change. So information about the performance degradations, that's what was detected by Dynatrace. This is where. Information about the configuration change that could be explaining this particular response time degradation, that comes from Evolven. That is why. So essentially, Evolven pulls the data from Dynatrace about the performance problem and pushed back a change that could be explaining this particular problem. So we can see here that a connector with the port 443, HTTPS connector of Tomcat, had a parameter enable lookups set to true from false. So that can explain why the performance is slower, right? Very easily, because now every transaction is going through the lookup. So let's look into another type of the problem. And in this case, we do have response time degradation, but this response time degradation is actually coming from a database, not from the application server. Again, without Evolven, an operator, a developer, again, or a production support person would need to go and start to investigate the queries, like why query is slower, right? What actually happened, again, where it's coming from. Evolven found a change that can explain the slowdown. And the change is that actually the database property, sync with backup, was enabled. So now, again, the database is spending time on syncing every transaction with a backup file. So in this case, again, almost doubling, at least doubling the time of the transaction. So that's where like the simple cases. Now let's look into a slightly more complicated problem. Okay. Again, a common issue that you investigate with APM tools, response time degradation. In this case, we see that there are 4 configuration changes, not 1. So Evolven was not able to pinpoint, just one change. There are like few potential candidates. We reduced the list of the potential root causes to 4 changes. So rather than start to investigate this data in Dynatrace, which again tailored for performance data analysis, what we can do now, go and investigate these changes in Evolven. So let's log into the system, and this link from APM tool took us directly to the Evolven analytics. And what we see here is actually a transaction, that is slow, right? The services that are slow. This topology is a combination of Evolven discovery with information, again, we pulled from an APM tool, from Dynatrace. So we can see a complex topology. There's a lot of components talking one to another, but there is a very important tab here, which says high-risk changes associated with this particular issue. So we go to the high-risk changes, and now we see a change matrix, right? We see that there is 1 change in database. That could be a reason of the issue. There are 2 changes in Tomcat and 1 in Windows. Like all of them can contribute to the slowdown. So let's start, analyzing that. And we see actually there is an index that was recently removed. And this index is related to the transactions that we are investigating. So that could be a problem, right? So one of the things we can do now is, if we understand the database, we can actually request to restore the index. We can file a change request, open a change request in the service desk, in this example, ServiceNow, to open this change request. Or we can share the data. Actually, we can share the data with the DBA and ask a response from the DBA to confirm if this is the right root cause. But now you come to the DBA with a very specific data, not just saying, hey, maybe database is actually causing that. Similarly, we can look at the Tomcat, and we see that there is a number of things in Tomcat. We see that a number of maximum threads was decreased, and we can see that we have 4 Tomcat servers. And this decrease happened only on 2 of them. Just like we have 2 green and 2 yellow boxes. We can click on them and see the difference. Some of them at 150 and 2 of them are 100. We also see that in these 4 servers, actually one of the classes was created, was compiled with Java 1.8, slightly different version of Java. Also could be a reason, but you can see also that Evolven gives, on the scale from 0 to 100, gives it a lower score. Again, this data could be shared with a subject matter expert, or you can actually request to fix remediate this discrepancy or this change. So with that, let me conclude the demo and move to the questions.
Great. Thank you, Sasha. I also wanted everyone to check out this link from Evolven to learn more. I'll also include this in the follow-up email. We have a couple minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the questions, starting with you, Sasha. APM tools like Dynatrace do come with root cause analysis and AI capabilities. So what is different in Evolven? Why another root cause analysis tool is required? Sasha, did you get my question?
Sorry, I had some slight trouble with the audio. Can you please repeat the question?
Oh, sure, no problem. The question is, APM tools like Dynatrace do come with root cause analysis and AI capabilities. So what is different in Evolven? Why another root cause analysis tool is required?
Oh, that's actually a great question. And when Dynatrace or any other tool comes with a capability of root cause analysis and artificial intelligence, again, they focus on the performance data, narrowing down the location of the issue. So their root cause analysis is actually taking you down to the location of the issue. APM tools are not collecting information about the changes. They are not analyzing risk of the changes, and they have limited correlation capabilities. That's where Evolven comes to the picture and actually provides the analysis of changes. We focus on change analysis, and we take the change and correlate it back to the APM data.
Great, thank you for that insight. Dennis, jumping over to you, I know you like to talk a lot about digital war rooms. This question is, can you say more about how you see the digital war room changing? What are the factors needed for success overall? And do you think any progress is really being made in most environments today? So that is actually more like a three-part question. What are your thoughts on that?
Yep, it could be a whole webinar, right? But I'll try to do it in like a few sentences. But it's a good question. From our research and from what I also believe in conversations, the war room has been defined as that reactive point where things break, well, you go to them and who knows what happens, and they all point fingers and they all want to escape from being blamed, etc. Mean time to innocence being the chief criteria. That's not what we're seeing in progressive environments, and we're seeing the war room evolving to become a more proactive, well-defined area to deal with incidents, and potentially with incidents not using the strict definition proactively, issues that could become incidents before they are. Those are defined teams that can include development professionals as well as operations and ITSM and security, potentially even business stakeholders when there are business outcomes involved, just so that they're aware. There's a whole technology associated with promoting that. Obviously, change, impact, and performance, and having that unity is central to it. But I would see a future as a proactive digital war room. Maybe war room isn't the best term, but a way of unifying teams to deal with issues were well-defined, processes well-defined, and can deal with issues ideally before they even occur.
Great. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Sasha, for taking those questions. We are at the top of the hour, so I'm going to conclude today's event. I hope you'll check out the follow-up email from EMA that will include resources from today's webinar, and I hope that we'll see you at a future webinar. Thanks again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.